Welcome to the Warfare Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Lane Lawson Craft. Join us here every other Monday. Now, let's get into today's podcast. Welcome to the Warfare Parenting Podcast. I'm Lane, and I'm so excited you are with us today. Listen, we have got a powerful man of God here today, Jim Burns. Hey, Jim.
Lane, it's great to be with you. We've met kind of online and we finally get to see each other face to face, sort of, at least through Zoom.
Yes. And I'm so thankful for Zoom. I mean, these things wouldn't be possible. So, there is so much to cover. People will tell you, I don't normally do a lot of notes. And the only reason I did a few notes today is, man, you have really reached millions of people with a powerful message for God. I kind of want to do a sneak peek behind who is Jim Burns. And so, Jim, first, I'm just going to say the official. You are the president of Homeward. You speak on strong marriages, confident parents, empowered children, and healthy leaders. I think what really brought us together was your great book, Doing Life with Your Adult Children. But you've also written The Purity Code, Creating an Intimate Marriage, Finding Joy in the Empty Nest. You are really honing in to some really sweet spots in all of our lives, and maybe bitter spots in our lives too. But Jim, we want to know more about you. What brought you into this ministry?
Well, interesting. It goes all the way back to being a kid. I became a Christian when I was 16. I was raised in a dysfunctional family. Dad was an alcoholic. Mom was married to dad, so that put her dysfunctional. Her dad was an alcoholic. And my dad was a functioning alcoholic. I mean, I didn't get beat, anything like that, but literally didn't know how to communicate, intimacy, which means connection. There wasn't great connection. And then I became a Christian. I went away to a Christian college. I met this beautiful girl on the first day. I said to my two new nerd friends, see that girl down there? I'm going to take her out on a date. And they looked at her beauty and they looked at me. I had hair then, and they laughed. But we got married 1 week out of college. She graduated and we were married. And funny enough, we had a real tough first year. So here we were both committed to, I was committed to youth ministry. Kathy was too. And that first year we would argue on the way to church. And then I would talk to the kids about the joy of a Christian family, feeling somewhat hypocritical, right?
Yeah.
But we realized that just because we came from dysfunctional families, but had become Christian, it didn't mean easy. So anyway, my call in my life was to work with kids. Kathy as well. Kathy was a teacher. And so her background was more working with kids that way. And my call was in youth ministry. And over the years, we realized that parents needed help too. And as we got older, we realized that, we can help these kids, but we also need to help parents. So we made a turn in our ministry and we started working more and more with parents. And it kind of took off, to be honest with you, Elaine. And so today we have the privilege to be the largest provider of parenting seminars in the U.S. I'm on a radio program called New Life Live, which is the largest Christian counseling radio program, 2 million listeners a week. And I'm on about a quarter of the time and absolutely love that. And we love what we're doing. You mentioned doing life with your adult children. I'd spent most of my time talking to parents about talking to their kids about sex and dating and media and social media and all these kind of things. And then people kept saying, please, speak on doing life with your adult children. It wasn't going well with their own children because they had kind of taken a bump. So in that process, I kind of begrudgingly at the beginning wrote Doing Life with Your Adult Children, partly out of desperation for my own life, part of it research. And really, God led us in a neat way. And so, today we spend at Homeward here, we spend part of our time, not all of our time, but, dealing with things like doing life with your adult children, finding joy in the empty nest. And my ministry kind of grew up. I was working with students and those students became parents. And then those parents, literally, I'm old enough where they became grandparents and, we go on and on. So there you go.
Well, that is so powerful. And it just shows you God's plan. I mean, if we're just obedient, you probably never dreamed back in the day that you would be doing what you are today. And another point that really hit me in my heart was that, sometimes our greatest pain points
Yeah.
are our most important message that we've got to share with others. Isn't that
No,
true?
I think that's the case with a lot of us. So my family wasn't perfect. Kathy's family was not perfect. We both, came from, she was first generation Christian. I was also. And so I think our hope for bringing families together, we had to make a decision in our marriage, in our life, that the Bible says you inherit the sins of a previous generation to the third and fourth generation. I wasn't an alcoholic. Kathy wasn't like her family, but we said we're either going to recover or repeat. And we were repeating some of those habits. And so we put a stake in the ground and said, we'll be the transitional generation. And really, that has been a testimony for us. This weekend, we happened to be in Palm Desert with our entire family here in California. And I put my arm around Kathy and I said, wow, we have grandkids now and they're all kind of playing by this pool. And I just said, wow, the trajectory has changed because both of our families kind of were going in one direction. And because of what God did in our life and what God has continued to do, our family's in a different place. And the Bible says, you inherit the sins of a previous generation. But it also says right after that, the next sentence, but the love of God lasts 1,000 generations. Right. And so what we're claiming is that our family will be different, that our family, my kids and their kids and those kids' kids, and long after we're gone, will be following the Lord. Not perfect. No one lives the perfect life. We still bump. And, I always say a sinner marries another sinner and then you have sinnerlings. And that's kind of how it works. Right. But that's our hope and that's our goal. And I love working out of the Homeward ministry because it really is with those four values of empower a strong marriage is empowered kids, confident parents, and healthy leaders. That's what we write, speak on, and it's a joy.
Well, that's amazing. And another just huge point that you made is that we can break that curse. I call it a generational curse. My husband came from a divorced family, and we came to a precipice in our marriage, 17 years into it, that we could either choose to continue that curse and that generational dysfunction, or we could believe that God could resurrect it. And of course he did. So I don't know who's listening today. If that's all you get out of this today, is that you have a choice today, that if you want to be in with God's plan, and he can do anything, right, Jim?
Exactly. And you don't have to feel it. I know your story and our story was we made an intentional decision, an intentional commitment to relinquish our will to God's will. And it's the right thing to do. It's not easy always, but it's the right thing to do.
Well, I want to also just talk about, because your book is so powerful. Doing life with your adult children. I pulled some points off of your site just because I know that many people listening today are asking some of these questions. And I know it's all in the book, and you've got this amazing new course available. I was just loving that. I went to your site the other day, and now I just want you to know, listeners and viewers, he has a course, and you can get the book with the course and get even deeper into this walk on how to do this.
Yeah, no, it's great. One thing that Homer does well is we put together books, but then we also bring courses around it for people within the church or in small groups or whatever to do. And so we think one of the reasons that doing life with your adult children has been so successful, not only is because it's hitting a core that parents don't know how to. We don't know how to parent our adult children, and our adult children don't know how to be adults. So, that it's kind of a combo. But what we have found is that if we can come alongside them with courses and things like that, it really does give them hope, especially ones who have kids who are violating the values, who are straying from faith, who are making some poor choices. It really does. It's something that, there's a lot of parents who have gone through it, and a lot of us have good stories at the end. Not perfect stories, but good stories.
That's right. And, I have found, and I'm sure you have too, people are now accustomed to doing things at home. So these courses you can do right at home, read the book, and it's as if they're right there with you, but it's in the comfort of their own home. And that is really making an impact.
Yeah, it really is. It's been it's humbling how that, a couple of weeks ago, Doing Life was number 14 on the worldwide Amazon list, meaning it was with, the most recent famous books that we know in the secular world out. And we went, what on earth happened? And then it must have been that a lot of people were doing it within the courses because they end up a lot of times buying the book. So the book just, was just, the book's been out since March 9th of 2019. So for it to be at 14 on that list was remarkable. We just are amazed and stand in awe and how God continues to use it. Yeah.
Well, and it shows you the power of the message. You
Yeah.
know, parents are desperate today for tools and applications, and
Yep.
you have delivered that. I've got a couple of questions, and I'm just going to get you to answer. And you know, is it okay, Jim, to give advice to my grown child?
Well, principle number 2 for me is unsolicited advice is taken as criticism. And I know that well because you can't see it, Lane, but I've got scars on my tongue here from biting my tongue. But I think our kids want our advice, but the relationship has to change. I say that you're fired as a day-to-day parent. You invested 2 decades of your life, but then your role has to change. And the role partly is not just giving unsolicited advice. You know why? Because what they see is that you don't trust them to be an adult. Well, that's not our intention. Our intention is always good. We think, and usually we're right, to be honest, but they see it as we don't trust them. So I always say, ask for permission, change to more mentoring. It's funny today, 2 of the 3 of my daughters, I have all daughters, but 2 of the 3 of my daughters have called me for some kind of checking in mentoring type advice. And I don't think they would do that if I kept, giving them advice after advice. So sometimes we just have to hush it up. The book, Doing Life with Your Adult Children, the subtitle is Keep Your Mouth Shut and the Welcome Mat Out. And pretty much that describes the book. So I don't think you give advice unless they ask. And our kids right now are asking all the time. They're in their 30s. We have a 2-year-old who's not feeling all that good today. I know there was a call to my wife to ask about it. There was another call on a job situation that she's involved in. And, it happens all the time. But I think it's better when they ask us, not us just giving advice.
And I have too. I've learned that the hard way. They're like, mother, mother. And so now, if they share something, I now say, Jim, well, do you want to know what I think? And if they say no, I go, no worries, because you're right. They're just going to reject it. I mean, they're just
and it's great. What's amazing is, you have such faith and you have so many good ideas, and yet your own children sometimes go, not now. And I've had the bubble in my head goes, wait, people pay me to give them advice and you don't want my advice? But it's always better that way.
That's unreal. Okay, I think the only other question I really thought that we all could really appreciate, and particularly in these days, when my child doesn't seem to be maturing, Jim, I'm seeing that a lot. I mean, I am talking to parents all day, every day with kids that are living at home. We have a record number of children living at home that are in their 20s and 30s and 40s.
Yes.
And so many of them, Jim, have issues, addictions, gaming issues. So I know this is a tough one. And so I left it for last, but what do you do when you've got kids that just don't seem to be maturing?
Yeah. Well, we're seeing a lot. For one thing, this generation kind of meanders toward responsibility. They meander toward eventually marriage, but sometimes they make some pretty poor choices along the way, like you said. So we have to understand that they are going to meander. They're not going to get married. I got married right out of college. The average kid today gets married in their late 20s or even early 30s. Different story. So I think we have to understand that. But I think when they make those poor choices, we have to be careful that we're not enabling dependency. If you want to help, so our intentions are always good. We want to help. But if we enable dependency, then that causes kids to be entitled and a failure to launch. So, if we bring them back into the home, that's great. I call that boomerang parenting. That happens all the time. And it sure happened during the pandemic.
Yes.
Millions of kids came home.
Yeah.
But the interesting side to it is the relationship still has to change. So we just can't enable that dependency. I talked to somebody recently whose son is addicted to drugs, and we were sitting in my office. They were sitting on that couch. And I said, well, who's paying for your son's drug addiction? I knew the answer. I was just asking them if they knew. And they said, well, we don't really know where he gets the money. And I said, well, didn't you tell me earlier in the conversation that you're still funding him? He still has an allowance and he's 23 years old and he's graduated from college. And the only way he has money right now, because he doesn't have a job, is coming from you. So you're buying his drugs. And they went, we're not buying his drugs. And I went, I want you to rethink that. What they were doing was they were enabling dependency. They said, well, he has a problem. I thought, well, he actually doesn't have a problem. You kind of have the problem because he's just living the life of luxury because parents are still taking care of him. So I think we have to make sure that we don't do that. launch them toward adulthood. And then also, when they're in trouble, I think there's a principle that I use. You can't want it more than they want it. And that's actually a important one. When our heart is breaking, we still can't want it more than they want it, because they're the ones who are going to have to eventually make those choices. And so we can't be a one-topic parent. I was talking to a woman whose daughter moved in with her boyfriend. She was devastated. And she goes, "It's the only thing we talk about." I said, "Well, does she know what you believe?" "Yeah." "Does she know what you feel about this?" "Yes." "Then expand the relationship, because this girl's going to crash." This girl happened to be dating. She was 22 and she was living with a guy who was 42. That's not going to work anyway. So when she crashes, do you still have a relationship with her? She already knows how you feel and what you think. So you don't have to just keep harping on it. That's not going to change it by being a one-topic parent. Now, there's some things we can do by, entrusting them to the Lord, but also by, developing a relationship that goes farther and more and deeper than just this one topic that's breaking our heart. That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, that was one of the most difficult things personally, as you say, that I have not heard it spoken in just that way, the one topic, where you just seem to dwell on that one thing. Every time you see them, you just was like, ugh. So that is really awesome. So expand beyond that.
Well, like, for example, I know a good friend of mine who's in a support group with me. I've been in a group for 21 years with some men, and his daughter was caught with an open container, and her alcohol level was right at the drunk level, but not even above it. Right. So she got pulled in because of the empty or the open container and because she had been drinking. And he has the capacity to bail her out and the capacity to get that off of her record easy, the financial capacity, easy. And he chose not to. So what they did was they said she's going to have to experience the consequences. We call that tough love. Tough love isn't being mean to your kids. It's allowing kids who are adults to experience the consequence of their poor choices. So this young woman had to go to DUI school, and that was just devastating to her because she came from a family that usually they bailed her out. Her insurance went up, so she had to pay for it for 10 years. It was on her record, so it was in her school record and her work record once she graduated from college. And they didn't bail her out. But guess what? She doesn't, drink with an open container in her car anymore. No. That was a hard move because easily his $5,000 might be like somebody else's $50. I mean, he could have easily paid an attorney $5,000. I've talked to several attorneys about that. They go, that's the easiest thing to get away from. He didn't do it. By doing that, he actually caused her some pain that allowed her to experience those tough love consequences. And you know what? He might have saved her life. I mean, if she was getting kind of wild and crazy with what she was doing when she was driving. Right. I think that's part of that aspect. That's hard on a parent.
Yes.
Because you want your kids, you definitely don't want your kids to hurt or have that on their record or whatever. It wasn't a bad thing. The kid's doing great. The kid came back to the Lord. Not that she hadn't even strayed too much. She simply made some poor choices in college, which a lot of students do.
Yes. Well, listen, real quickly, again, doing life with your adult children, what are a couple of things that you can leave us with to make somebody go right away, go get this book and get the course? What else will they learn inside of this book?
Well, for one thing, I hope they'll get a lot of hope because, kids do make poor choices, but really good parents have kids who make poor choices. And we have to identify that it's not all about us. I mean, I think a lot of parents with their kids making poor choices are saying, oh my gosh, if we would have got them going on that mission trip at church, or if we would have done this, or if we wouldn't have fought ourselves or whatever. And I say to a lot of parents, no, you did a great job. Their kids made some poor choices. And hope is a thread throughout that book, but they're also going to learn how to deal with finances. They're going to have to deal with what do you do when you have somebody that they're dating or that they get married to that you really don't like. I call that the blend. And then eventually, the very last chapter, I love the last chapter because it's on grandparenting. And I say it's a love relationship between generations. And I tell people, even if they don't have kids yet, or grandkids yet, but they've got to be the party time grandparents. My grandma, who was not a Christian, but she was a party time grandma. And I was drawn to her. She was so influential because she cheered me on. She never gave me the underwear and socks for Christmas. She gave me good stuff, and she didn't have a lot of money, so it wasn't expensive stuff. But, we live in Orange County, California. And so my grandma would come and take us to Disneyland, which when it was cheaper. And we'd go, we called her Nini, and we'd say, Nini, can we go home now? We're so tired. She'd go, one more ride, Well, you know what? That lady had my full attention on everything.
Yes.
And we get a chance to do that now with our kids. And we wanted our daughter, Christy, and her husband to have a date this week. And so we always take care of the kids are in the neighborhood. They're at our house all the time. And we said, can we take care of your kids? And then we took them out for pizza. We had such a great time getting to play with them. And then we stopped by and bought a card game. We played Go Fish. And we just had a great time. And when the parents came back, we weren't even tired. We were like, oh, you guys came back already? Kind of thing. But it was really neat. So I love that my greatest influence might be my grandkids. And to do that, I've got to stay in good relationship with my adult kids too.
Yes. Well, I'm just going to affirm that my mother passed away this fall, and it was a great loss to all of us because they didn't have much money, but she was always intentional. I mean, the gifts that she would pick for our children were right what what they were interested in. And they were just very intentional. And my kids miss them for the memories. Because they really impacted them often with intentionality. So
absolutely. Intentionality seems to be a theme we're talking about here, Lane, in many ways. It really is an important part.
It is.
And we have to be intentional about the decisions we make, but also intentional with our relationship with God, where we really do put energy and time into that so that we have the right relationship with him.
Amen. Amen. Well, Jim, again, thank you so much for coming today. I know that many learned a lot about you. What's the best way to find out more?
They can go to Home Word. That's home and then word, like the word of God, WORD.com. And that has all the info that we have at our ministry. And it's we're doing some pretty great things there. A lot of free stuff they can get, like tips and articles and blogs. And we send out 7 million blogs, and within a year they get that. So a lot of people like our stuff. Lots of great practical resources on our values.
Well, you're amazing. I'm so thankful for all that you do. And I know it comes at a sacrifice, and you have been so committed to helping so many. And I just thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Jim, you also endorsed my book. So y'all, The Parent's Battle Plan, Warfare Strategies to Win Back Your Prodigal. It is out and ready and available at any bookstore. So please pick it up. Jim, you're going to be with us on another episode, and we're going to talk about the power behind that and why you chose to endorse it. And again, y'all have a great day, and I love y'all, and see you soon. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Warfare Parenting. I hope you found some encouragement or helpful info today to help you on your journey. If you have a specific topic you'd like for me to talk about or a guest you'd like for me to have on the show, please feel free to send me a message on Instagram or Facebook. Listen, I love connecting with you, and so I've made it really easy for us to stay connected. Text Hi Lane to 55444. That's HILAINE to 55444. Also, be sure to follow the podcast so you never miss an episode, and leave me a rate and review. I would be so grateful. I'll see you next week.